Okay, I'm sharing an article with you. It's Penelope in London, and other than astrology that I love to do, I'm sharing a bit of spoken word on the content of this Substack article I wrote a couple of days ago, and it's part one, and it will be a series because I'm reading the book Hypnotism and Disease, which is by Hugh Crichton-Miller. And there's a reason behind why I'm reading this, why I was led to it, a couple of reasons. And I'm going to read the article and go through it, and then also I will dig in a bit deeper to let you, I'll ad lib a bit as I'm reading, so you know what I'm not reading directly. I'm going to read it, but also add to it. So this week, which was last week, I began reading Hypnotism and Disease, which is written in 1912 by Hugh Crichton, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Miller. And he was born on the 5th of February, 1877, and he passed on January 1st of January, 1959. And he was born in Genoa, Italy, whose early medical interest included hypnotism. And he later became one of the pioneers of psychological medicine in Britain. And in 1920, he founded the Tavistock Clinic. So the thing is, with the Tavistock Clinic, it's, the last few years, like in 2020, they had a lot of problematic stuff going on. And over the years, I think also it had various things go on that were problematic. I won't go too deeply into that, but that's knowledge known that you can check out online. And the reality, the beginning of this whole process of the Tavistock Clinic is really beautiful. But as we go through things, clearly things change. So what makes this book meaningful to me is I'm not just approaching it as a historical book. I have trained in clinical hypnosis in 2023, and I found that it's a useful tool to help people to get into a relaxed state. I listen to audios on YouTube, hypnosis audios going off to sleep, which I find really therapeutic and works well for me. So this book, as I've said, it's not just the historical text that I'm interested in. For myself, I received therapy at the Tavistock in 2018 to 2020, which has a long backstory, which I'll come to throughout my posting when I'm doing these paid post for people who are doing paid Substack. I want to be a little bit more transparent. So, what happened was in 2024, I returned as a peer support worker as a role that continues in it until November 2026 this year. The issue was that I had therapy because I had a meltdown in 2000 and end of 2016, 17. I'd been through CSA trauma for many years of my life as a child, and it came all hit head like in 2016. That's when I was 50. So that was a while ago now, but I was glad that I was invited back to be a peer support worker. I've learned a lot, but I also know that the role is not to be in an organizational role is not really my soul journey or my life path. But I have learned a lot, and I've been able to help people and see behind the scenes of what goes on and how things can be developed beyond that. So reading the work of this person who found the clinic, which is Hugh Crichton-Miller, it was returning to the beginning to explore the original vision behind an institution as playing an important role in psychological medicine. And reading the work is brilliant that I came across this book because I realized that inside the clinic there's a plaque on the wall, or it's sort of stone in the entrance, and it's on the wall it said Hugh Crichton-Miller, and I thought, who's he? Knowingly that Carl Jung had a connection with Hugh Crichton-Miller, and also Freud, his house when he had to escape from Vienna, his house the last year or so of his life was in a couple of streets away from where the clinic now is. The original clinic was in Holborn in London, in Tavistock Square. and it was called the Tavistock. So I think that's where they took the name from clearly. So I've only read 16 pages so far, and I found myself drawn into the way of his thinking, because he writes about enormous change in medicine and psychology. He's connected with the emerging world of early psychotherapy, including, as I've just said, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, and was interested in the relationship between the mind, the unconscious, and the physical health. Now, we know that Carl Jung did a lot of work around the unconscious content and the collective unconscious and archetypes. And then we've also have that Freud, when, they were sort of, it's the same thing, that they were dealing with the mind, but they had different belief systems around it. But clearly, it's all of these people together that brought us what we have now. So the First World War brought a profound challenge to medicine, because we call it, what's PTSD now, it was called shell shock, complex PTSD trauma. It's shell shock, changing the way psychological trauma has been understood. And there were several themes that I will begin to explore as I read the book, which is the curiosity and the evidence around hypnosis as well. So Crichton-Miller, he talks about both blind acceptance and premature dismissal, because we can dismiss things so easily based on our belief systems, but we can also see that blind acceptance of things without, looking at it is also not the way to go. He argues for a science that remains curious, examines evidence carefully, and continues searching for explanations. And in Hypnosis and the Unconscious, his work explored hypnosis and its relationship with the mind, opening questions about the connection between psychological states and physical well-being. Because I do know when we go through difficult times, and I had a couple of weeks that were quite challenging for me, where you sort of come to a place where you're at the end of a friendship, and how that knock-on effect can link in with the past and our history and how we grew up and how we react within these dynamics when we're trying to understand or, step away from something because we've had our boundaries crossed in a heavy way. But also how with that we, have, the body can be affected by our stress levels, and we can suffer bodily conditions as a result. So the mind and the body are definitely connected, and there's not always a definite, proof. There's no definite proof, but we can know if we know ourselves and we know our mind and we know our body. So I'm going to also talk and say that I'm on page 16, but I have a very strong affinity with understanding this and the use of hypnosis, because if we consider it, when we go into sleep, the hypnagogic state, I don't know if any of you, sometimes I see images, I'll see imagery the first 15 minutes as I'm dropping off to sleep, or I'll see faces, or I will feel that you'll feel like you're interacting with somebody, that you're not quite asleep. You're sort of in a state where you're still partly conscious. And it's a wonderful, I find dreams a wonderful tool to actually instigate our healing. So we don't force our dreams. We can't dream about something intentionally. It's the unconscious at work when we're sleeping. And let's see here. As I said in my article, I think we're going to find some beautiful stuff in this book. But I got this made up. I made with our friendly AI. I had this lovely picture. I took a picture of the book, and then I sort of explained what I'm up to, and I got this. So part 1, hypnotism and disease, and exploring the origins of the psychological medicine, the unconscious, early psychotherapy, the birth of trauma medicine. So this is a journey. There's Sigmund Freud, there's the Carl Jung and the Tavistock Clinic. And I'm not saying that's the Tavistock Clinic now, it's a huge building, and it's by Swiss Cottage in London and round the corner from Freud's house. So if you ever pop up that way, you can visit Freud. It's a museum, Freud's house, it's a museum. It's quite fascinating to see all of his objects. And, he had, there's clothes there, there's his glasses, there's all bits and pieces and the famous couch as well. So then what happened was, as a result of that, in my studying for this, or not studying, but researching, I came up with a thesis that he did, Hugh Crichton-Miller, he did a thesis, and it's a substantial piece of original written work by a doctor who trying to earn at the time, to earn the degree of Doctor of Medicine. So I think today that in the UK, doctors first qualify with a medical degree. I hope I don't get this wrong, such as an MBBS, I understand, or an MBCHB, Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, and an MD is usually a postgraduate research degree requiring the doctor to investigate a particular medical subject in depth and then contribute new knowledge. So in the late 19th and early of 20th centuries, Hugh Crichton-Miller studied medicine, and the MD was likewise an advanced qualification. It demonstrated that a physician had gone beyond basic medical training and carried out serious scholarly research. And that is then, if I bring up this thesis that I found from Edinburgh. I love the Scottish accent. Let's see here. So I'm going to share this. Hopefully you can see this. It's a PDF, and it was written. So going back to this, it tells us something important about him. He wasn't someone who discovered hypnosis later in his career. It was the subject he chose for his highest academic research at the very beginning of his professional life. The timeline is very beautiful. He was born 1877. He was born in Genoa, Italy. Then in 1902, awarded his MD at the University of Edinburgh after writing his thesis on hypnotism. And this is what I'm going to look at as well. This is separate to his book, but this is quite a beautiful find. So I think it says it's 63 PDF pages up there. And then in 1912, he published The Hypnotism and Disease, which is the book I'm going to be reading. And then in 1920, founded the Tavistock Clinic. So there's a lot to dig into here. And I hope this is useful to have a listen to see where I'm coming from. And I'll hopefully get a bit more natural at explaining my story along the lines of, being transparent, but one has to be careful when we've had particular types of traumas that, that oversharing, one has to be so careful because it can be very triggering to people. So it's doing it in a way that's learning and understanding that through particular types of traumas that we can still build and have a life, but it is a process, and there's been a lot of learning, and I've got a lot of wisdom around that as well, which I think sharing with other people will be helpful in time. So there you go. I'm going to stop share, and I will come back with some new information in the coming few weeks. Thanks for listening.